Ulterior and we're here with Computer Music, giving you a tutorial of our Obsession remix that we did for Metalheadz 2 years ago. We're going to be taking you through the stages of the drums, the bass, and the sort of our general approach of the remix.
Okay, so Future Cut had all the samples. Actually, they give us quite a few samples, vocals, effects, drums, and all bits and bobs. Some of them were better than others, so I could play you a few. Well, where's a good one?
A change so strange, but how does it do this?
So we got all these, got them into Logic, started to kind of piece together the arrangement as Future Cut did it, and then started to rewrite it, wasn't it, basically, like part by part. So we rewrote all the drums, rewrote all the pads, and then just basically used the original vocal.
Yeah, it was all about sort of formulating the structure of the original track first, to sort of get the general feel for it, and then we just sort of started to rewrite the drums first, because we always start with the drum break first whenever we write a project. It's the best place to start because you get them sounding nice and loud to start with, and you bring everything up to meet it. So that's probably a good place to start, walking through the drums.
Well, if you look at the arrangement here as well, this is kind of how we always do it. It's quite a big project, this one, but it starts off, this whole section at the top here is like the main drums, and then here is just different sort of shouts and percussion parts, other bongos and crashes and stuff like that, and then you've got the actual sub bass. These are the mids, so the respaces down here. This is all the pads, this kind of reverb hits and effects here, other vocal effects, and then just anything else at the bottom. So if we go up to the top here, this is the main section of drums. Pretty much 90% of the time we put all of our drums as single hits into the EXS24 in Logic. So we don't tend to use audio that much. I know a lot of people do put everything in sections of audio, but we like to put it in the EXS24, and then the benefit of that is we can have maybe 30 kicks kind of mapped out over the keyboard, and then we can just flick through on a MIDI channel. If we bring up the piano roll here, you can see here's the kick here, and there's, well, in this case it's just one kick, but sometimes there's all sorts of different kicks. So you can have the loop playing and flick through and then choose the best kick for that particular break.
It's really handy for sort of when you're sculpting your drum kit for sort of transient shaping. That kick might be wrong, and sort of find a tighter kick.
Exactly.
It's better in the workflow.
So this is the break as it is. So that's just broke down simply as just one kick there. There's a few different layered snares on this one, so there's like that was done in Superior Drummer actually, and then bounced down. But we'll touch on that later. I'll open up the old projects and show you the Superior Drummer. Big reverby snare. Another one. And then it's the Lati break here. Some shuffles. And you can see on each one of these we like to process it harder per channel rather than smash it on a bus. So they've all got a bit of compression, some alloy transient shapers, limiters on each hit as well. It's not how we always do it, but that's just how it kind of came out in this project. Okay, so on the main snare, if we bring up the alloy, just a bit of a bump there at 200 Hertz, transient, higher transient on the attack, so just gives it a little bit more snap. And then the dynamics is on actually, but as you can see there's no ticks in the boxes here, so even though the dynamics is on, there is actually no dynamics. So this one is just essentially a little bit more attack on the transient shaper and a little bump on the 200 Hertz for a bit more punch. I mean, on this break it was very like kind of vibey. You just keep putting in layers and taking away layers and try and get it sounding big and rough, just like the original Future Cut tune was kind of like really raw. We didn't want a kind of minimal break, did we?
No, and if it sort of over process it and and produce it like you would do a normal sort of drum and bass break these days. You take by cleaning it up too much and taking away out all the imperfections, you kind of lose the nostalgia of the track, and we really wanted to hold on to that in this remix.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Also, I just noticed on these drums here, a lot of them go to this bus 12. So the bus 12 will be the drum bus, and on the drum bus there, another alloy, a little EQ taking off some of the top, and just a limiter, UAD precision limiter we used on this one. So just at 0 dB there. So it's just catching the peaks, any peaks that go above 0 dB. So on this one, this is the drum bus. So there's a bit more EQ going on here, a bit of low end, and then a little push at the tops there. There's an exciter here. This is probably just from a preset actually, just to load up a preset exciter on here. Some dynamics, just 6 dB, and then on the second dynamics 21, so quite a lot of compression there. And then limiter, almost 3 dB of limiting on there. So the drum bus is pretty pushed actually from the alloy. So that's how it sounds without. Just wanted to give it a bit more body, a bit more depth. So yeah, once we decided on the kind of drum pattern, then we wanted to go in on the edits, didn't we?
Yeah,
lots
sort of separate drum rolls.
So that's we've actually bounced those down here, actually, haven't we? So, for example, this one here. That's it. So as the drums are rolling, it keeps every 8 or 16 switching to these different drum edits.
All the drum breaks are written and edited in XLN's Addictive Drums. We use that a lot. We've used that a lot in our previous productions, sort of like Featherweight, 2098. They're all written with that drum machine because we really like it. It's got a really good acoustic sound, and it sounds nice and live, and it's really easy to program and get a nice bright sounding drum
Well,
kit.
let's show you now. Shall we show you how to do it?
Yeah, we'll walk you through some of that.
Okay, so this is a project. What we normally do is something like with these drum edits, because Addictive Drummer, Superior Drummer, they're all quite RAM intensive, aren't they? You open up and use a lot of memory. So we do a couple of drum edits, bounce it down, then do a new drum edit, bounce it down, new drum edit, just keep going like that, and then you can really save your memory. So this is Addictive Drummer, this is the edit. Okay, so just like we said before, MIDI regions, and then here it is. So do you want to explain a bit about it?
Yeah, so what we do with this, if we come back to the kit, we will program a drum kit here, so that we've got your kicks and your snares and your hi-hats, and it takes a bit of time, but we go through and we check the different hi-hats and the different kicks and the different snares to sort of formulate your own drum kit rather than rinsing the preset banks that it comes with. It's much better to sort of have a bit of an exploration into what's going on, and then you make yourself an original sounding edit. So then we did do this, so if we play it again, so what we did here, we've cut out some low end because the low end's already in the original break, you don't really need it there. It's got some nice compression on it just to sort of tighten it all up and make it sound.
It's got quite a lot of compression on that one there. Yeah, alloy again.
And then and more alloy. We used alloy a lot on the drums. Alloy's a really good plug-in for drums. And again, it's just sort of got a nice bit of bass additive, exciter. It's almost got the same. It's actually got the same.
It's probably the copy across from the drum bus.
And
one thing to point out with this Addictive Drummer, it's really good because there's so many kits on it. Starts off down here. If I explain on the piano roll, it will start. Every kit that you choose are all mapped to the same key, so the kicks will always be on the same hits, the snares will always be on the same keys, the hi-hats, the crashes, cymbals. So you can actually, you can just move up like that, and then you can change different drums and different patterns, and it'll still be triggering the same.
I mean, you can do it as an example, like if you just play that way.
So you can see, you can go through, and then there's actually the effects.
There's some distortion going on inside there, isn't there?
So as you click on each, so for example the kick you have a pitch filter, pitch envelope, volume envelope, EQ, distortion, and that's just for the kick. Then you get the snare, hi-hat, and then you've got different overheads, room, buses, so there's quite a lot of stuff you can do within actual Addictive Drummer.
And it's worth doing it within Addictive Drummer because it just sort of keeps your processing power within your channel strips in Logic down.
For example, there's just the, if I just shorten this loop, you could put on the pitch envelope. That's the kind of thing we'll do, play around with this kind of stuff. And then if you play it with the rest of them, you can just like endlessly play around with it until it starts to come together. Bounce it, rechange the sounds, bounce it, rechange the sounds, and that's just kind of what we did, wasn't it?
Yeah, and that's how the edits were really done for this tune. But not all of them, some edits are from original breaks, aren't they, somewhere later on the line. The main frame of the original had the assembly line break in it, and because we rewrote the whole break, we wanted to still keep that characteristic. So at the beginning here, we've kept the sort of vocal shout from the assembly line.
That one there, isn't it?
Yeah. And then we also added what's this one again?
The funky drummer?
Yeah, the shout from the funky drummer break, which gives it the call and response. I mean, it plays really well off the bass later on, which we'll show you. So, yeah. Sort of helped us sort of keep the characteristic of the original tune, but just sort of put our own little twist on it, really.
Okay, so there's the main kind of feature cut break pattern going through most of the tune, just here. And then we switched it up a bit. 8 bar little break here, and then we switched up the drum pattern for a more straight 2-step. It's basically the same drums, isn't it? Just with a different pattern and then some different percussion underneath it.
It's nice bright cymbals to cut through the mix on this bit.
So that old break there, that's just that's the new break that comes in over the top of the old stuff. And it just gives it that, because without that, just needed that.
Yeah.
Because this pattern over here is a lot more hectic and fuller. It needed just an extra little layer on this, and that's just what we've laid in there. And then some rides over the top. So the rides cut out all the bottom end and some of the harsh top end there. In the XS24, just pitched it up, 5 semitones there, long release.
A little bit of attack.
Because we wanted to sort of bleed into each other. If we put it back down and take the release down, we wanted to get rid of the click at the start.
So on the outro of the tune, this is the only break that we used from Future Cuts samples that they gave us. It's just the straight funky drummer.
Yeah, just stuck that in at the end.
And that's pretty much the drums of the tune. It's an overall view of the drums of the tune anyway.
Yeah, in sort of summary, it's a lot of single hits, bouncing down, and the edits were just Addictive Drummers. And just going and having fun, bouncing and bouncing, and then putting them in, and that's what we've got. So the Reese then, that was obviously like a huge part of the original tune. The main hook, Reese. And it wasn't like a standard Reese, was it? It was kind of like, had a big notch out of it. It's I don't know if I can find a way. It doesn't matter anyway. It's just like, it wasn't the kind of neuro Reese that we're used to now. So we wanted to kind of recreate it as best as we could. So what we used was, this is what we came up with. And it's out of FM8. So it's a really simple patch actually. If you haven't used FM8 before, it's all about this mod matrix on the right hand side here. Each of these blocks are basically, you can think of them as an oscillator, A, B, C, D, E and F. X is noise, Z is a filter. So we're not using the noise or the filter here. F, operator they call them. So the F operator, when it's got a line coming down the bottom there, that's the output, that's what you're hearing out your speakers. And the way it kind of works is, each operator will modulate whatever the arrow's going into. So this, you can think of this oscillator C is changing what oscillator E is doing. Oscillator D is changing what oscillator F is doing. So if you press the right button on these and turn them off. So this is just a single oscillator. And as you click on it, you can see you're talking to F up here, and then you've got your waveform. So you can change the sound there. If I turn on E, E is going to be modulating F. So you choose your different waveforms, and then you've got envelopes here. Turn on D and C, and this, a lot of it's sort of trial and error. And with Reese's, you can see up here the ratio 1, that's just a fixed pitch there for F. So the pitch isn't changing on F. If I go to 2, it's going to double the frequency of F. So it's like going up an octave. So if I turn on the other operators and click on them, see they're slightly detuned. So it's 1.03. This one's also 1.03, 1.06. This one here on the envelope as well, you can see as the sound starts, it waits for a bit, and then this one starts to come up, and that's it. You can kind of hear it. And it's high pitch as well because it's not 1.06. If I drag this in, I don't know if you can hear that, but it starts low and then it comes up higher. So the Reese sound from FMA sounds pretty cool. But if I take the plugins off, if you look on the left here, there's a Camel Fat, Omicide, Dynamic Spectrum Mapper, Ensemble, which is just a stock plugin from Logic, EQ and a limiter. If I actually take these plugins off, it sounds pretty different. So that's what you're dealing with.
You hear that?
So you start off with a basic patch in FMA and then just start building up on it. Camel Fat is our sort of go-to distortion. So straight away, bandpass filter on the left here. We've just taken a little bit of the bass out and some of the tops. Like that. Distortion, 4 types of distortion. We've got a bit of tube, load of exciter and some mech. This mech is really, really destructive. If you push that too much, it really crushes the sound. So that can either be amazing or sometimes it can completely ruin the sound. A bit of a filter going on, some compression, magic EQ, that's like supposed to be a kick EQ, so it's down at 84.6 Hertz, so it's just got a little bit on there. So you can hear what
Really brings it out.
really giving it the low, but it's made it quite muddy. Omicide, multi-band distortion. So you can see 1, 2, 3, 4 bands here going from low to high. In fact, I can solo each one. So that's the
bypass.
So there's the low band, low mids. That's actually not mids. That's the crispy top. And that's kind of sheen on the top. And so you can hear that's really brought out a lot more top end. And then you can change these knobs up here. They're the separation for the frequency. So if I turn that one up, this will be talking to more of the bottom end. If I move it down, it will talk to the less. And you can see here where it's split. So this is the frequency range going from low to high. And as you move these around, the band. And then within the band, you've got different distortion types and compressions and gates. And you just basically, like all plugins, you just give yourself a bit of time with it and just move stuff around, see what the different knobs are doing, and then you've got the levels at the bottom as well. And then you end up somewhere that's pretty good, and then you move on to the next.
If you're just sort of starting out with FM8 and distortion, there's a lot of perseverance involved because with FM8, when you're setting up your operators, you're only ever a few rotations away from turning a good noise into a bad noise, and vice versa. And like as we showed you, the dynamics of the tune and of FM8 and the basses don't necessarily appear to be there until you start applying distortion and stuff. So it's definitely worth playing around for longer and just persevere, because you will get something good
A good tip as well, I think, is move sliders throughout their range, because sometimes they've got a real sweet spot and it's not always exactly clear where that is. So if you just go to start and then you find a good plate and you just go around and just do that with all the different controls, and then especially with filters and distortion amounts. The next plugin we had was the DSM, Dynamic Spectrum Mapper. Now this is like it's a bit more of an unknown plugin, I think. We got this tip from Hybris, didn't we? And it's like a dynamic processor, but it really brings out the top end in things. If I take it off, and then it's the ratio and gain. These are really important controls on this. It's another one that can be too destructive. Okay, so that's your the DSM. Ensemble. This is a Logic plugin. This is kind of like a sort of chorusy stereo processor. So this kind of softens it up a bit, and it really gives that wide chorusy ensemble effect. And then taking the lows out, because that's going to be where the sub bass is, and then the highs.
We always underline sub over our mids. You know, there's always pure sub, isn't there? That's a good trick.
With a mid, you just don't want too much sub, because you're always going to underlay, like you say, a sub underneath it to give it the power.
And then finally in the signal chain, we just use the UAD just to control the clipping again.
Yeah,
actually,
so
that's driven a bit more.
It's driven,
isn't it,
yeah, 3 dB. What we did with the Reese as well, wasn't it? Once we got that FMH pretty CPU intensive.
That whole channel strip's pretty CPU intensive,
Yeah,
to be honest.
I mean, normally we'd actually use a guitar rig as well, but for some reason we didn't, because I guess we got there before we needed it. So what we did is we get the actual the Reese in, put it down as MIDI, bounced it out, and then brought it in as audio into the EXS24. There it is. So there's the actual. So it's different again. So what I'll do,
it's got more processing on it here. Like we've reprocessed it more.
Reset that channel strip, just so the project doesn't crash. Okay, so Reese bounce. So this is now the Reese within the EXS24. Now this is, I can see here, because this is off, there's no sort of filtering going on with it in the XS24. The tune's at 0, so it's pretty much, there's nothing within the sample that we did, so it's all from the top. So what do we do?
It's been reprocessed more, as always. The key is always reprocessing, bouncing and process.
So to start off with a bit of EQ again, take the bottoms out. We've actually brought in the stereo, because that ensemble must have been a little bit too wide. We've brought that in. This plug-in here, directional mixer, if you put it to 0, that makes it mono. If you put it to 1, then that's the standard. And if you put it to 2, it increases the stereo field. It gets rid of the center signal. So we just took that into 0.8 just to narrow it a little bit. Add limiter. That's just a brick wall limiter from Logic.
Dynamic Spectrum Mapper again.
Dynamic Spectrum Mapper, yeah, okay. So that's just again controlling the dynamics. Make it loud and bright. And then a huge amount of limiting. I think what we probably would have done with this is just pushed it as loud as it could go and get it distorted, and then pull it back a little bit, just so it's
the key to Reese's in like sort of the authentic old sounding Metalheads tunes is they were really lashing and loud. There's nothing smooth about them. It was all driven distortion, and it was a lot of it was done through analog gear at the time, and trying to sort of recreate that in the box. We just drive it as hard as we could before, push it to the limit really.
And actually, you can see the channel's actually clipping. It shouldn't do that. We normally try and not have any red light clipping per channel, but obviously we did in this project. And there's reverb as well on buses. We always, well not always, but 90% of the time we send a Reese out to a bus, to bus 3 this time, just with a platinum verb on it. And then the more you send, obviously, the more reverb, so there's no. And if you keep, so it's down there. And then when you put a reverb on a bus as well, you want the mix to be completely wet, no dry signal, so that you don't get any sort of phase issues. And that was the finished Reese, really. And in fact, where's the on the intro, we balanced it out, didn't we, and had like a phaser. Okay, yeah, so that's the. So rather than automating that on the main Reese, we just put that in as a new channel. So it's in 2 parts. There's a start, and then there's the automated filter on there. So we can see on the automation. Let's go and have a look. So the feedback and tape delay wet is being automated on this one. And what is actually on there? So it'll be the same Reese as the main Reese in the XS24 here. This time there's a filter on it on a high pass, and you can see envelope 1 is changing the filter cutoff. So that's why the Reese goes up. It's all to do with this here. Change it to a low pass. So that's the envelope here modifying the filter cutoff. And the actual flanger on there was the Waves Meta flanger. This is a really good flanger actually. We use this all the time if we're going to use a flanger. So that's there. So you can actually set the speed of the flange. So it's on 0.25 Hertz. You can actually see there you get a nice graphical representation of the speed of it. So you can just turn the mix up or down. So we just had it kind of subtle and slow. So that's the flanger. What else have we got on here? We've got, oh yeah, this is a little tip actually for getting some, if you've just got one Reese and you want a kind of detune effect, what we did was we brought on the Logic pitch shifter. And we've got it 49%, 50%, so it's 50% pitch shifted and 50% original, and we've just put it up 43 cents. And if you take that off and then put it back on, so you kind of get that unison detune kind of effect going on there. Normally you do that within an actual synthesizer by having 2 oscillators and detuning them in pitch, and you get that kind of effect. But if you've got a sample and you want to do it, you can put a pitch shifter on it, put the mix to halfway, and then detune the dry signal to the wet signal.
And then, then the EQ's not doing anything.
The EQ's just pushing the gain actually.
Yeah.
So the EQ's just making it a bit louder. And then add lim, which is just on the standard setting, just so it doesn't go into the red.
And that's the Reese.
That's the Reese. Right, so that Reese actually happens twice, and the automation was on the tape delay on the second half. So this one comes into the breakdown. So as we play it, the mix goes up, and also the feedback. What's important to do with this, if you've got Logic, you probably already know, but if you go above about 52, it will never cut off. The feedback will start on the delay, and it will just carry on through your whole tune, and it'll actually get louder. The more you go, it can get, it can really sort of it can become too much. So what you've got to do is you've got to automate the feedback back down below 50%. If I leave this up sort of at 60%, you'll hear. And then it'll just never stop. So you've got to then automate it back down again. So start of the Reese is this. We put in this new that stab there, and that was actually from the Mentasm loop, wasn't it? I put up it's from this sample here. which we actually use later on in the project anyway. But we put it into this into the sampler.
Give it a nice sharp pitch envelope.
And it actually came out a bit like the stab out of Alien Girl, didn't it? Like, so if we take the plugins off, so it's just a bit of compression, again brightening up with the dynamic spectrum mapper, pitch shift,
It's actually down an
octave and 50%. Just kind of crunches it up a bit.
If you want to maintain the speed of a sample and the pitch in the Excess instrument, it's best to use an external plugin like the pitch shifter, because you can pitch it down an octave and it won't change the speed of your sample. If you were to slow it down, obviously it would be twice as long than it already is. So that's why we use it on this one.
I mean, it's not very good, is it?
No,
I mean,
it's not the best. There are better ones out there,
but sometimes that it can help the sound because it sounds a bit rubbish.
A lot of the time, it depends what your sample is as well. Like if you were using a vocal, a longer sample, the pitch shifter in Logic's probably not the one, but that's a really tight stab, so it saves on CPU than using sort of a more expensive one.
Yeah. So that's that really, and then it just goes out to the same bus as the Reese did, bus 3, just a general bus for reverb. So under the Reese, there's 2 subs in this. There's like a low down kind of Reese that sits under that. So that fills out the bottom end. And actually, this is different notes, whereas the actual Reese goes from high to low, the bass goes low to high, because the high, I think it was like, I don't know, an A or something like that. In fact, what was it? A G sharp. But if we put it up too high, it just didn't have the right... In a club, that G sharp was just too high, you know.
Disappointing on the drop, really. It was just not enough weight in the bass.
So what we did was just put that down, put it down an octave, and then what you really notice is the Reese. So the Reese still maintains its high to low kind of ratio, but you get the extra bass from the sub. The actual sub that we used was just a plain Reese kind of sample, like the old Ray Keith kind of sub.
Probably not registering, is it? On the...
And you probably can't hear it because it's so low. In fact, we used a Reese there, much more distorted Reese, and then just took all the tops out of it. So that's just a standard Reese. Put it down low. You probably can't hear it. This is a multi-band compression. So we've just got a load of. You can see here from like 200 below, and especially 100 below, it's pushing it. You can really hear it, sort of boominess. Alloy again. Loads of bottom end, and then roll off the top end. Bit of drive on the exciter. A fair bit of compression on there. And 2.8 again on the limiting. Taking some top end off on the EQ, and then just 1 dB of gain on the limiter, and then it's kind of call and response with the 808 sub.
This call and response was our addition to the bass line, really, because it doesn't go like that in the original, does it?
So if I bring them both up on the piano roll there, you can see that you never want 2 sub notes playing over the top of each other, because it's just going to eat up too much headroom. So you can see these kind of ambery ones, they're the 808, and the reds are the Reese. So what you don't want is the regions overlapping, because then there's going to be too much bass there. So that's the call and response. So it goes 808 Reese and then 808 at the end. If you start having them over the top of each other, it starts to distort and sound. So that's another thing you've got to be careful of. So that's how you fill out the bottom end of the Reese, basically. And the 808 has got a little.
Sort sort of standard
Just
clunky effect.
Just because on their own it's too low, so we wanted to sit up in the mix. So it's just a kind of couple of effects. I don't know, bongos or distorted something. And then when you put it all together, the 808, the clunky effects, the mentasm. That's the main hook.
Right, so for the intro of the Obsession remix, what we wanted to try and do was put our own spin on it, as we normally do with a remix. So after 32 bars, there's no longer any original music from the Future Cut remix. It's if you can see from like here to this pad and this pad here are the two notes that are played in the original, and they were the only samples that we didn't get from Future Cut in the sample pack. So we had to actually try and sample that off the vinyl, and it was quite tricky to try and get it to be coherent and work, because the timings, we've sped the tune up and the timings weren't quite right, but we've sorted it out. There's a lot of time stretching, a lot of bouncing, and a lot of sort of EQing to get it to sound right. So once we did that, we've layered in another pad from Zebra. We use just a sort of preset that we've tweaked a little bit to fill it up, if you can hear that. So
yeah, so there's the. So we just copied the chords basically. A bit more low end.
and it just sort of filled in the gaps from where we had to sample the vinyl, because there was a lot of crossover that wasn't quite marrying up properly. One of the other problems we face with the intro is that the samples we were given were slightly out of tune. We were trying to work with it for a long time, and we realised that there was 23 cents, I think, out of tune. So once we sort of figured that out, we were in a much better place to sort of move forward and start adding stuff to it. So if we move on for a bit, what have we got in here? We've got
so there's a pad that goes through.
the pad goes through. So after 32 bars, you now start coming into what we've made to it, and because we copied the chords, the ear doesn't necessarily realise that we've cut back and we've started adding all this extra instrumentation into it, the sort of strings and chimes, and just wanted to sort of give it a more theatrical, dreamy approach.
And obviously the vocals playing over the top of this, you know, in the actual tune as well. So, but that Zebra is great, isn't it? Like, beauty about Zebra is it's modular, so you can put in different oscillators, you can put in filters, and you can all different types of stuff, and link them together different ways. The routing's good, and there's these performance, a bit like Alchemy, the way you can put the X and Y to different modulations, so, and then you can just kind of do this. I mean, we haven't done it on this one, but that's just I definitely recommend Zebra. It's really, really powerful.
The purpose for Zebra in this tune was purely just as a bed, one of the sort of low end bed. It wasn't the main feature. It was just merely to sort of be the undercurrent to the instrumentation we were putting on top. So with the strings and stuff, we run a system where when you're sort of collecting samples and stuff, a good tip is to put them through mixed in key, and then when you're sort of working on a composition, bounce your composition out, find out what key it's in, and then scan your sample banks for samples that are in the same key. And a lot of the time, you know, it does take a bit of the creative process out of finding samples and tuning them and stuff. It's a lot better for workflow. It's, you know, sort of find, like, I've got, you know, a whole bunch of orchestral samples. Bang, you know, you can go, right, this tune's in 5A, there's all my 5As, yeah, that works, and then you can slowly start building great compositions that way. It's
not the be all and end all, is it?
No, but it's good for workflow. It's very good for sort of quickly, like, I need to find a trumpet sample. Instead of going spending hours trying to pitch this up, pitch that up, you can go like, right, this tune's in 8A, bang, where's all my 8A trumpet samples? That works, you know, and then you can edit them, reverse them, pitch them up, you know, an octave down, an octave, or whatever.
So this is mixed in key here. So you just open up a sample into it, and then it will come back with 8A, 8B, whatever, and then you get this circle of fifths here, and so 1B, it actually means B major, and if something comes in 1B, you know that any other sample with 1B is going to work with it. And the way that the circle of fifths works is where you can go fifth either side, so you know that 12B and 2B will also work with it, so straight away you've got 3 different keys there. I mean, it doesn't always work with it perfectly, but you can just throw them in and then it's a good starting point.
Yeah. So yeah, once we've sort of collected our samples in that way, we'll then map them out in the Exis instrument, create Exis instruments for them, and then that way we can sort of play. Oh.
There's only about 5 in this one. Yeah.
Different samples up and down the keyboard, and when not necessarily in this project, but what's good about it is when you're working with something where you've got lots of samples for, you can then start creating good effects by just sort of playing different notes sort of simultaneously, randomly, and you can get some really cool effects out of it.
The vocals on this, we were supplied the full vocal from Jenna G, not from Jenna G, but of Jenna G, and it was already processed, so we didn't have to do too much with it. I think it was anyway. We didn't bounce it out, did we?
There was a combination of wet and dry and a bunch of ad-libs, but these look like it's just straight.
The actual singing here,
I'm possessed, caressed by the music.
we've just got a LA2A there from UAD. We use the UAD stuff quite a lot. And then out to another reverb.
I'm possessed, caressed by the music.
Just gives it a few dB of compression there. What we did do, there's one part where we pitched the vocal down here, just to create a kind of harmony. So if we put it with the actual. And what we use for that, we use this loads, don't we, on vocals? This is the CLA vocals. The tip from FD, wasn't it, Freddie? Actually, what we normally use is the what's really cool about this one is this pitch slider here. So you've got 3 different algorithms, and as you move it up and down, it creates more of a widening effect. But as that's switched off, all we use this one for some compression, some treble, and take out a bit of bass. So that's what we did with this plugin. That's a Waves plugin. Some EQ, cut out the bass, and then dip at 2K, and then the tops. This is one of the Ubics, so you can see automating the cutoff.
But you could use any cutoff for that. Really.
Yeah, it's a simple. And then again, just 5 semitones down. But this time it's 100% wet, so it's 5 semitones down. Not like the detune thing we had on the Reese, because we wanted it completely wet because the dry signal is up here. And in the context of the actual track, it just gives it a little bit more body. And then we used that low pitch vocal again at the end here. And a bit crusher there at the end, so just taken a section of our vocal and then just repeated it with a crossfaded loop, and then with a bit crusher on it, just a Logic bit crusher. If you play it all together, it just rolls in.
I'm pleasure, caressed by the music.
And that was pretty much it. That was pretty easy vocal work on this one, actually, because it was already 90% there.
That's all from us, Ulterior Motive. Thanks for watching this DVD. We hope you find all the information that we've given you today of use to you. And be sure to catch our new single, Make It Roll and Give 'Em Contact, out now on Metalheads.